Welcome to National Pension Partners, where retirement planning meets peace of mind. Today, we're diving into the 412(e)(3 plan, also known as a fully insured pension plan. This isn't just any retirement plan. It's the gold standard for stability and guaranteed benefits. How does it work? Simple. It's funded exclusively by life insurance and annuity contracts. This means no market risks, no actuarial assumptions, just ironclad guarantees. Think of it like this. You're a small business owner who hates surprises. The 412(e)(3 plan gives you predictable, stable contributions every year. Your future benefits are backed by insurance contracts, so you know exactly what you're getting. No guesswork, no headaches. But there's more. These plans are designed to maximize your contributions and offer significant tax advantages. And with National Pension Partners, you're not just getting a plan, you're getting a team of experts, attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, all dedicated to making your retirement as secure as possible. We provide personalized consulting, ensuring that your plan is tailored to your specific needs. Best part? Initial consultations and proposals are absolutely free. $0, zero commitment. So if you want a retirement plan that's as reliable as your morning coffee, head over to nationalpensions.com. With the 412(e)(3 plan, your future is in safe hands. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling. Perfect for small business owners who like their finances as predictable as Monday mornings. Stable contributions, ironclad guarantees, and serious tax advantages. It's the trifecta of financial security. And with National Pension Partners, you get a team of brainiacs, attorneys, CPAs, actuaries, ensuring your retirement is as secure as Fort Knox. Oh, did we mention the free consultations? That's right. You get a personalized expert proposal with $0 down. So, if you want a retirement plan that's as reliable as your morning coffee, head over to nationalpensions.com. Because when it comes to your future, boring is the new exciting. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling. For more details, check out National Pension Partners at nationalpensions.com. Retirement planning never sounded so thrilling.
Good to hear from our sponsor, National Pension Partners, and all along those lines. And of course, today we're talking about those brainiacs like Nick Palveda, and we might be seeing him later on this show as well. I guess that was one of our sponsors to the network and all along those lines. But right now, let's get into some news. I do see that one of my co-folks is here as well, one of my co-panelists, and that is Sasha, so we'll have him join us in a minute. But apparently Ukrainian troops or Ukrainian forces are advancing in southern Russia. That is what Zelensky has said, and definitely Russians are fleeing the Ukrainian incursion as those Russians are saying that Putin has abandoned them. So that's one of the things that we're seeing in the news. And apparently it looks like another politician has pulled a Joe Biden. At least that's what some folks are saying, because apparently Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has resigned. He said he will not run in September, paving the way for a very competitive prime minister race in Japan. So definitely they're saying he's going to step down next month. So we've had two world leaders that have decided that it would be better for them to step down versus running for office, that being Joe Biden and now Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. And as Gaza talks near, diplomats are trying to keep war from spreading. So Hamas to stay out of Gaza truce talks, and Iran is apparently considering an Israel attack. So high stakes Gaza ceasefire talks will resume this week, and there are apparently some obstacles to the deal, and that's one of those was Hamas staying out of the Gaza truce talks. But Sinwar is said to demand a halt to IDF operations in Gaza as a precondition for the talks, and that was reported on yesterday. And candy handed out by a New Zealand charity contains potentially lethal levels of uh, meth, meth oil, that drug of meth, basically. I'm not going to do a good job of pronouncing it apparently today and everything. But a charity gave donated candy to families, and it turned out to be meth. So that is something that I'm sure that charity will have to deal with as well. And Tropical Storm Ernesto is lashing Puerto Rico and will become a hurricane soon. So maps are showing Tropical Storm Ernesto's path and forecast it as it passes north of Puerto Rico. So it looks like that's going on. Who knows? And maybe that'll impact us here in North Carolina the way that Debbie did, in that kind of way. And apparently 150 milligrams of semen was found in the Calcetto doctor's body, and suspect of gang rape, and that's something going on, as well as, like I said, when that case was just dealing with Calcutta rape and murder. Parents are suspecting gang rape and claim that 150 milligrams of semen were found in the victim's body. So Indian doctors are on strike after the training medic was raped and killed, and all along those lines. So there's definitely some big protests going on there. And Thailand's Prime Minister Shredi Salvasan has been removed from office in a shock court ruling. So that's something else that we're seeing as well. So apparently they are saying that there were some gross ethic violations, and definitely that's something going on as the Thailand prime minister was removed, but the crypto policies are likely to remain largely unaffected in that area in political uncertainty. So I guess that's an area that's been having some serious crypto action and all in that way. And Germany issued an arrest warrant for a Ukrainian over a Nord Stream bombing. So that's something else going on, as well as the Germans have had an arrest warrant for a sabotage blast suspect. So that is something that is taking place as well. And looks like the Taliban are celebrating 3 years in power over there in Afghanistan. So it looks like they've been in power in that area, despite that area having some serious hardships. And a Israeli minister was denounced for a prayer call at a Jerusalem holy site. So U.S. has led the international condemnation of Ben Gvir's provocations at Temple Mount. So that's something else that we're seeing in the international news as well. And definitely there's still a lot of things going on even in South America, because the world knows Venezuelan people voted for change. That is what the opposition leader is saying as well. So definitely, it looks like we're going to see what happens in that area, as the UN has slammed repression and lack of transparency. So apparently, we're going to try to find out whether the ones that won actually get to move into power, and all in that kind of way. So, and the German military base is on lockdown after that suspected sabotage that I had mentioned earlier as well. So, like I said, there's things happening in the Europe theater as well as the Asian theater, and all in that way. And apparently, 2 polar bears killed an Arctic Canadian workers in a rare attack. So that's something else that we're seeing as well. So you got to be careful of the wildlife. And apparently, if you're going to go there, they might even decide that they want to attack you as well. So that can be something very sad in the news. Let's see what's going on in the U.S. Then I'll bring in Sasha, and I think I heard another beep, which means somebody else might be joining me in addition to Nick, and we'll see what's going on. Tim Walz defended his military record as he was responding to GOP attacks on his military service record. So there is a viral montage showing Tim Walz falsely being identified as a retired command sergeant major over a dozen times. And on his first solo campaign, he was defending his military record, because a lot of people have been attacking him on said record. And Trump is to deliver remarks on the economy as he returns to the campaign trail, ironically, right here in North Carolina. So he's told a rally in North Carolina, and the Harris campaign has launched a $90 million ad buy. I believe that's here in the area as well. But Trump is to discuss economic challenges at the Asheville Town Hall, and I believe that later on this week, presidential candidate Kamala Harris is supposed to be having some serious or some similar conversation, and who knows, maybe we'll actually hear some policies out there as well. And it looks like they're saying that California electric vehicle owners are dodging taxes, and that could be an interesting issue as well, because they're even trying to figure out about funding local roads in the era of EVs and shrinking fuel taxes. And some people are saying that subsidies could be an answer. Some people are saying that taxes could be an answer, or both. So it looks like the states here in the U.S. are split over EV policies. And it looks like the squad got a boost because Representative Ilhan Omar defeated Don Samuels in the Democratic primary. So that was a member of the squad that actually won and survived primary race despite the other losses that the squad had in the past. So there had been a squad losing streak, but she broke that losing streak, at least in the primaries. We'll see what happens in the general elections. And definitely, Donald Trump apparently tried to reveal why he sounded strange during the Elon Musk interview, and he's blaming technology for somewhat different and strange voice in the Musk interview. And who knows, that could be an issue, because I know sometimes when we start this show, the one of the founders sounds like Donald Duck, and I do know that Donald Trump in the past had complained about equipment even at the NABJ when he talked to them, the National Association of Black Journalists, and all in that space. So who knows, maybe there were some technical difficulties, even though in talking to folks that went to that particular conference, there were not technical difficulties. There was a long delay because apparently Donald Trump was arguing against this whole notion of being fact checked, because they wanted to fact check him doing that entire discussion live and during the time of it. And I think that he was balking at that idea, from what I've heard from some of my fellow journalists that went to that particular event in Chicago. And it looks like an ex-NBA player, Royce White, has won the GOP primary and will face Amy Klobuchar in Minnesota. So definitely it looks like that's going to be an interesting race to watch as well. So we've got an ex-NBA player that is throwing their name into the political landscape and all in that space. I was joking about LeBron James yesterday being a Republican and running for office. Well, Royce White is an African American gentleman that is an ex-NBA player that is running for against Amy in the Minnesota race. So definitely that will be interesting to see as well. And definitely, apparently the Democrats, some Democrats are saying that they were blindsided by Harris with her no tax on tips plan, because we know that that was a plan that Trump put out there as well. So I guess there were some folks that were feeling that they were blindsided and all along those lines, because it looks like Harris, some Democrats, and even a Nevada union have endorsed Trump's no taxes on tips policy. So, and Wisconsin voters rejected a ballot question restricting the governor's power over federal funds. So the Wisconsin constitutional amendment was defeated. So that's something where the spending powers and having some limitations on those were defeated. And it does look like Missouri and Arizona will vote on abortion rights. So they're going to join 5 other states with abortion on the ballot. So it looks like there are going to be 7 states that will have abortion on the ballot at that when we get to November. And in that case, so definitely it'll be interesting. And we've got people talking about fraud again. So Harris County election officials in Texas accused of time card fraud after the Texas Rangers probe, according to DA Kim Ogg over in that area. So it looks like there's no evidence of fraud in the Harris County 2022 election, but one was charged with theft. So corruption charges were announced in that 2022 Harris County election case, even though the investigation shows no evidence apparently of an intent to sway. And the U.S. has approved a $20 billion Israel weapons sale to Israel. So it looks like $20 billion in weapons could be heading to Israel, including 50 fighter jets. So I know we sent some equipment to Ukraine, and it looks like now we're sending some equipment to the whole area of Israel as well. And a U.S. police officer has been charged with shooting a pregnant woman in Ohio. So Blandon Township police officer has been charged with a murder in the Takia Young shooting. So definitely it looks like this young lady was pregnant and got shot by the police. So I'm sure there'll be investigations into that as well. And last but not least, it looks like former pro-Trump county clerk has been found guilty of tampering with voting machines. So that's just some of the things that are going on in the news and all along those lines. So like I said, get ready to bring in my fellow folks and see what they've got to say about a number of these things that I've been talking about and see where we're going in the discussion. So I'll bring in Rick Rosner, I'll bring in Sasha Starr, I'll bring in Dan Worthington, and there's Dan and everything. I'll also bring in Jacoby, and I've got Steve Rao with me as well. So I'll start off with Steve.
Yeah, I'll start off because I've got to run out to a meeting. Just wanted to welcome everyone to the show. Big news: North Carolina Vice President Harris is coming to Raleigh tomorrow on Friday. I'm probably going to be out of town on my way to Florida, but it's going to be very interesting. Her coming in. We don't know whether she's coming in with Vice President Walz. I know it's hard for people to believe, but I think she's gaining ground. I mean, but I think a lot of it's going to depend on the debates and the specifics that she rolls out this week. I think a lot of her campaign's been on more emotional issues and hasn't really been as much about details. So I think it dives down to the economy, although Trump's starting to have his own set of gaffes and mistakes and, going after Governor Kemp in Georgia, which they say could be backfiring. And so we'll see what happens. I mean, I think it's going to be a close election, and all eyes on that. I would like to get some insight from Sasha probably tomorrow when I'm back about Ukraine, Russia, because there's been just lots of things going on there. And I'm going to hand it back to you, Mark. I got to head into the car to go to a meeting.
No problem.
I'll be back tomorrow and tomorrow night.
Sounds good. Before you leave and everything, I just wanted your thoughts and anybody else that wants to jump in, because there was a lot of pushback when Biden decided to not run for office, but apparently there is another world leader that has decided to do the same thing. So the Japanese prime minister has decided he's not going to run as well. So me and Nick earlier today, as we were starting this show, we're joking. Is this going to be a new trend among our Western leaders? Are we going to see a bunch of leaders because they feel that they are not in a position to win, deciding not to run because he is now the second one? And even some of the people in Japan are saying that he is copying the move of President Biden and everything.
Well, so I think my theory is, and I'll end with this, and I hope I can come back to it, but my political theory is that you're seeing kind of nationalism and populism spread around the country, the world, especially the Western areas. And I think that within the United States, my prediction is in the next 10 to 15 years, I think you're going to see a lot of one-term presidents. I think it's been so hard to run the country. It's so divided. But you're starting to see this in England, even though it's a different system. They haven't really been able to hold on to prime ministerships longer like they did with Tony Blair, Margaret Thatcher, even John Major. So I think it's going to be interesting, and you're going to see resignations and people shifting around a lot. I think even Macron could be in trouble eventually. So I think this is something to see, and we're going to monitor it and take a look. But I think it's going to be, in my prediction, United States of America, in the next 4 presidential races, there's going to be 4 different presidents. That's my prediction.
Yeah, hey, Rick, what do you think? Are we going to see more people that are going to be dropping out of different countries' races? Because this now is the second one that decided to do this.
I have no idea. People are calling for Trump to, some people drop out because he's kind of old and kind of crazy. But I think Trump's ego won't allow it. And he's hollowed out the RNC, the Republican Party. His daughter-in-law is co-running it. I don't think there's anybody in a position to force Trump out.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
I want to mention, you mentioned that the Trump people are accusing Harris of stealing his idea for no tax on tips. I've got an article here from this morning's LA Times why Harris's idea for tips is better than Trump's. And it goes into, unlike Trump, Harris actually has proposals for how this would work. And one thing is it's got to phase out for high income people. That one danger of this is that, people who make millions of bucks a year could declare what they've been paid as tips. Like a hedge fund manager could say that the fees he receives from his investors are tips. And, this guy just tipped me, $3.5 million. And Harris's plan says, no, that's not going to fly. And there are a bunch of other things, including the child tax credit. And so it's not exactly a copycat idea.
Yeah, I got a question for Nick really quickly and everything, and then we'll get to some of the other topics. But one of the ads I've been seeing running, because we remember the money that came out during COVID, but one of the ads for Harris implies that they will make it easier to buy a house. As many people know, because I don't hide it, I live in an apartment, but many people would love, even if they lived in an apartment, if they could actually own a house, even though a house takes maintenance and more maintenance than an apartment does and everything. But is this something that might be a plan where they come up with some sort of housing credit where people are able to get a house easier? And if so, will that plan work? Because that's kind of what the ad kind of implies, that they're going to make it easier to purchase a house and all along those lines. So what is your take about home ownership as a way to get some support and all along those lines?
Rick has a comment on that.
So Harris has a record on that. In the crash of 2007, 2008 was due to lenders it was a whole scam where you'd let people get mortgages who really couldn't qualify for the mortgages, and then you'd sell off the mortgages before they defaulted to some other sucker. And in that whole collapse, a lot of people lost their homes. And Harris went up against the banks and won a $20 billion settlement for California people who lost their homes. So she's got a history of standing up for that. And any proposal to get more people to be homeowners has to avoid the mistakes of leading up to 2007.
Sasha.
Nobody lost their homes. Nobody. Because the homes were never owned by these people. What's happened, it was the greediness of Wall Street when they were sending their representatives to, say, a couple who lived in who knows where, and say, you can own the house. We don't have any money. We will give you, and not only to have a house, or you will have a mortgage to pay instead of rent, you will get also extra $50,000 cash just for doing that. So you will have home ownership and $50,000 cash. Oh, okay, that works. So they grab $50,000 cash, go to Las Vegas, gamble away the $50,000, come back, go into the bank, put the keys of that whatever house they got. Thank you very much. We cannot pay. Bye-bye. So nobody really lost this house. It was a Wall Street, very sharp operation. And a lot of people in Wall Street, by the way, lost money. And, well, you can see the movies on this theme and many other information available, okay? So nobody lost the house.
Yeah, there's the one movie, The Big Short. If you can find The Big Short on cable or streaming, that explains the whole scam.
But see, Rick, it goes back to our poor educational system in the United States, our K through 12. In other words, during your K through 12 education in the U.S., nobody takes a class on home mortgages, purchasing home, and purchasing real estate. Nobody. So you can imagine you have a huge country, and all the teachers want more. They want more income. Yet they do not teach one class on real estate investing and purchasing a home, which is a very important class. So until they know what they get into, the basis of the bargain, we're kind of wasting our time. We do need to build more housing. We do have to have a policy to build more housing, but also people have to understand mortgages and interest rates and down payments, okay, and payment schedules and adjustable loans versus fixed loans, and also pricing. In other words, too many people, the minute they get money, they go out and buy a house and they overpay for it. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it needs to start in our K through 12 system.
The adjustable, you're muted, Jacoby, but
I just wanted to point out that there are many areas where people are being taken advantage of, and we cannot always blame the educational system on the fact that, for example, people get hit by phishing things where, you know, their computer is hacked, their email is hacked. Are we now going to blame the education system because of the hackings and they're not teaching coding classes and understanding that? We cannot always, yes, we do need financial literacy, but we're not going to teach a real estate class and drop these other classes that we have to have. Because the thing is, we have to start to look at, one, yes, our education system needs to be improved. Yes, it would be great to have a financial literacy class in there. Teaching real estate and all the other stuff, that's an expansive thing that cannot take over some other classes, because again, we have to start to really look at regulations to help out with these issues that we come across when we come across all these internet scams, when we come across all timeshare stuff, which happens to be a scam, which some of the companies do. We're not going to teach a timeshare class in high school. So we have to stop blaming everything on the educational system and start looking at how can we begin to regulate some of these things, because even homeowners associations are a scam. But the thing is, we're not going to teach about homeowners associations in high school or blame that on college, on the teachers. We have to look into, again, some type of regulation. That's how we have to be able to help out and even the playing field.
Well, you have to be selective in your education, your learning. Maybe some people are happy to enter maybe a Trump University and learn something else there, concerning real estate and so on. Now, I'll be blunt, actually, that it's probably easier to teach your dog real estate classes than some students in certain schools. Not that they're so stupid, although some of them are, simply because they're not interested. They don't want to know anything about real estate. So why would you teach an idiot who doesn't want to know anything about real estate or business or so on? Why would you teach him? Forget about it. Also, don't forget that U.S. economy needs suckers. So if you will educate all of them and so on, there will be no suckers. The economy will be destroyed. So you need suckers. So forget about teaching. Let them suckers grow up.
Yeah, I agree.
Go to.
Let's hear from Dan.
I think Forrest Gump said it best. Stupid is what stupid does. And we can't protect people against the natural consequences of their poor choices. Now, true, it's not fair if people are being suckered and cheated. But on the other hand, if they're smart enough to know what it's all about, they won't be suckered, right? And so, I mean, people have to pay the consequences of their choices. Guess what? They won't do that again, because now they learned that was a stupid thing. Well, maybe they will. I don't know. But that's the problem in our country is we have so many victims, and people are treating themselves like victims rather than pulling themselves up by their bootstraps and taking advantage of the opportunities that are there. There are plenty of opportunities. This country is a land of opportunities, right? Now, whether it's a fair playing field or not is another question. And so there is that issue, but it isn't. But people have to pay for the consequences of their poor choices. I know I've made plenty of them.
But the problem is, let's get down to realistic. The problem is, and this is the reason all the three speakers are wrong. The problem is you're not even giving the kids the basic education to make correct or incorrect decisions. Instead, what you're doing for various different reasons. Jacoby says, ignore the children, let's do regulations. Then Sasha says, ignore the children because they're stupid anyway. And Dan says, let them go ahead and make poor choices anyway. That is all doesn't work. What does work is to provide them at least the basics of real estate education. Now, we do have timeshare education on this channel. Now that you guys are all talking about, we need real estate education on this channel because it's not provided.
I think we're supposed to have a real estate show.
Not provided in K through
Yeah, I think
12.
we're supposed to have a real estate class.
I think you're having a basic.
You guys all have lame excuses why you want Americans to be ignorant and poor and stupid. Okay, but go on.
Hey, I got
Having a basic understanding of how money works, how to build wealth, how to manage your own personal finances. That used to be something that was kind of taught. You know, they used to teach home economics. They used to teach all sorts of things. And what we're seeing today is this focus on DEI and, you know, the unlimited amount of different genders there are and express your sexuality when you're 5 years of age. So maybe they could take that out and put in how to balance a checkbook. Maybe that would help. Rick made some comments just before I jumped on about the banks and their involvement in the calamity in 2007 and 8 and 9. I'd just like to remind the panel, this wasn't because of the banks. This was as a result of very poor government policy. And as usual, if there is a problem, it is almost always the government that's behind it. The banks didn't just go out there and start lending to people that were high risks. The government told them to, because the government said, oh, we want to make sure that home ownership is available to everybody, so that everybody in America can live and achieve the American dream. And what did the Americans do? They didn't go out there and buy, you know, a small, normal, affordable house. They all went out and bought McMansions. And I don't blame them. I'd have done the same thing. So, you know, the result was that there was too much money being pumped into the market because of government guarantees, because of groups like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and all these types of different schemes that you had. And as for Harris standing up to the banks, I mean, the banks are normally mega donors to the Democrats. So I don't buy that for a minute. I believe that they, and the $20 billion, well, I mean, what do they get? $700 billion in TARP? And that was just the banks, let alone what all the other groups got, let alone the amount of money that went to groups like AIG. So I think to level the blame to the banks did exactly what they should have done. The banks were told by the government that they'd bail them out, that they'd look after the toxic assets. Go ahead and gamble to your heart's content. And the bank said, okay, if that's what you want, if you're wearing the risk and I get to wear the benefit, I'm in.
Right, so
exactly
Shaq's right about the government policy, and Sasha's right about the people really didn't own their houses because they didn't have any equity in them, but the deals being offered to people in 2007 were irresistible. You're some guy, say a Latino guy working in a fast food joint, you've got a wife and 3 kids, you're in an 800 square foot apartment. Some mortgage broker says in Vegas, you're living in Vegas, says, let me put you in this brand new 3,000 square foot house. And you're like, I can't afford that. He goes, we'll get you an adjustable mortgage payment where you're paying 1.5% for the first 2 years. You're paying $350 a month for this house for the first 2 years. And you're like, what happens after 2 years? Oh, you'll be fine. You'll get a raise. And so this family moves into a beautiful new house, and after the teaser rate ends, they're screwed. They get kicked out. That happened tens of thousands of people. And yeah, it was sad. Yeah, they didn't really own the houses. And it scuttled our economy.
Well, but did it though? Did it actually do that? Because I think you have to calculate the total benefit to the economy of all of the extra activity that occurred because of these loose lending rules. How many extra builders were there? And the builders would buy their own homes, and they would buy their materials, and they'd employ other people, trades, plumbers, electricians, et cetera, et cetera. So, the total cost of the decline versus the total amount that the economy had expanded by prior to that needs to be taken into consideration. The other thing that I'll remind you, and I'll remind people around the world, that during those terrible years, the cost of living was really low. So when people start complaining about the cost of living being too high right now, the Fed has told you, they've specifically said that the way that they will bring down the cost of living is to crush demand. And I'm really surprised that people don't pay attention to that when it's actually mentioned by them, that is what they're planning on doing to bring down the cost of living.
Hey, Shaquille, and I did see Jacoby's hands as well, but wasn't that around the same time that y'all are talking about it? Correct me if I'm wrong, because it's still trending now, even everything. But I want to say that was the time that a lot of people were buying homes in depressed areas that were in bad shape and remodeling them and refixing them and then reselling them again. I mean, even one of the houses that I own, that my family owned, when mom sold that, the people that bought it, fixed it up and everything, because it was starting to have some deterioration and everything, and then they resold it at a better wealth and even made it.
It acted like a Ponzi scheme. There's if they're putting, millions of people into homes that they can't really afford, that creates demands for the homes. That means that the prices, I remember you can look up how much your home is worth on Zillow. I remember during that time watching the value of our house get higher and higher, and I'm like, well, this seems like bullshit. Is there any way I could insure this value? And it's called a credit default swap, and regular people couldn't do it. But yeah, the people, as house prices exploded, all sorts of people were getting into real estate, and it was who's left owning that. You wanted to flip the house, get out of it, and who was left owning these houses with values that dropped 70% when the whole thing went to hell.
But I just want to clarify something though, because a lot of people are under some misconceptions here. So firstly, if you want to, next time this happens, Rick, take some put options over a real estate investment trust. CDSs don't do what you've described. But just in relation to this, it wasn't just the fact that people couldn't afford to pay the houses. It was the derivatives trading around this that was the problem. And the reason it's a problem is because the derivatives are used as collateral for what's called repo transactions. What that means is that when banks try to borrow money in the short-term markets from each other, they borrow money and they lodge collateral. And what they do is they enter a transaction that says, I will buy that collateral back off you tomorrow or next week or next month or however long. And normally it's an overnight transaction. If the value of that collateral has decreased, maybe I don't want to buy it back off you. Or maybe you don't want to lend to me because you don't trust the value of that collateral anymore. And the problem that's then going to cause is that money is not available for other types of normal transactions. This is one of the reasons why Ben Bernanke, and if anyone's watching any of the movies about him with Harry Paulson, he was very concerned that if he puts this injection of capital, that are the banks actually going to spend it to free up liquidity, or are they just going to keep it and pay themselves bonuses? But the issue is a lot more complex than just people losing the houses, because that in and of itself, whilst tragic, I don't think would have had too much of a dramatic effect on the markets. I think it was because of the credit crisis, a massive drop in the amount of available cash, and the fact that international markets were spooked by it and were also pulling their money out of the United States at the time.
Jacoby, you had something you wanted to add?
Everything that we're talking about gets into the details and everything else. Hence the reason why I roll back to what I was saying to Nick, not to ignore the kids. Hence the reason why we do a financial literacy class on basics. But all this stuff is not going to help a kid who just like Sasha was actually saying, but he said it in very colorful language. But his point was, if a kid wants to learn coding, if a kid wants to be a political scientist, if a kid wants to be a doctor or a nurse, that kid is not going to truthfully focus so heavily, and it's not going to be helpful for him as much as we're sitting here talking about all the housing market and everything else and real estate and so on and so forth, focusing on a class that's going to force a kid who doesn't even care about real estate at the moment. That's not his importance or her importance. Their importance is focusing on, okay, what biology class can I get into? What chem class can I get into? What all this stuff I can get, what robotics class I can get into. So this is why I say a financial literacy class is great. That's fine. Do the basics, understanding of money. But what we're going to have to do, everything that we've talked about the, you know, from Dodd-Frank to the explosions, there were a lot of people who actually knew money. They were getting taken advantage of because the regulations and the actual rule sets were written by the banks, and therefore these individuals were getting taken advantage of because they knew the loopholes other people didn't. So if we had balanced regulations, some type of rule sets to actually level the playing field, because Dan actually said something very profound, and even though he said the stuff that everybody gets upset about pull yourself up by your bootstraps, the point being is if there's a level playing field, and if we can get to that level playing field, then everybody would be fine with the pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But the problem is we don't have the level playing field, and until we can get there, adding all this stuff, people are still going to get taken advantage of.
And Jacoby, I just see your hands, Sasha. But Jacoby, one of the things that Shaquille brought up, and I love to hear everybody's on the panel thoughts about it, including Sasha. And I did see, like I said, the hand up and everything. But one of the issues that has been going on for a while, and you kind of alluded to it, Shaquille, is that there was a time, even when I was in school in the 70s, that there was a lot of vocational training, and a lot of that vocational training is not active anymore. A lot of the kids are not having an opportunity to be a welder, an opportunity to be a mechanic, an opportunity to be some of these vocational training because
the education system is pushing them into. The education system is pushing them into all sorts of things, one of which is tertiary education, right, and professional education. When there's a shortage of tradespeople, doesn't make any sense. But I noticed that you don't want to put, or Jacoby doesn't want to put the kids through courses that they don't want to go through. But it's okay for the DEI stuff, which wasn't responded to. Let's force the DEI and gender stuff on not just kids, but on adults, as if that's somehow going to be helpful to the economy, as if that's somehow going to be helpful to people that resent it and don't want to do it. So I noticed that gets left aside
in the gender stuff.
Those of course they're not. Yeah, all right, of course they're not. And then the last thing that you said in relation to Dan's comments was, it's fine for people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps as long as they're already on an equal footing. Dude, the world's never going to be that equal. You're living in bloody fantasy land, okay? And if it was equal, there'd be no reason for them to have to pull themselves up.
A level playing field.
Let's go to Thatcher. He had his hand up.
Level playing field, because you had said that I did not respond to your points. So let me respond to your points real quick.
But you don't like me going back and forth.
In terms of a level playing, Shaq, I let you talk. So
you let me. You let me.
Shaq, I let you talk.
That was generous.
Shaq, I let you talk.
Generosity has no.
So in terms of a level playing field, I did not say completely. There's a difference between equity and there's equality. So we're not talking about everybody having the same box and everything else. What we're talking about is actually having that same ability, because there are, as we have all agreed on this panel, and we've all said on this panel, there are things that have harmed many different communities within our society. So therefore, allowing those communities that equal playing field. So the reason we fight against DEI or affirmative action and all this stuff is because those things, even in the Black community, people are upset a little bit about DEI because of the way that it has been used. It has a good purpose. It's the same thing with affirmative action. People in the Black community are upset about affirmative action, but they want affirmative action. Reason being because the purpose behind it is to provide that equity to allow for people with that same basis, because if you're poor Black and you're poor white, there's a difference, but there shouldn't be. In reality, there really is. So what we're talking about is that equal playing field, or that fair and level playing field for both individuals that have that same way of climbing that ladder, but right now it's not there.
That's never going to happen. You're living in Fantasyland. Sasha had his hand up. Sasha had his hand up.
You want to be the director of everything, and I know
Sasha had his hand up. How much longer do you want to go on for?
You're going to let me finish.
So
again,
Exactly. You can just go on forever.
If we're
It's called a
talking about
filibuster.
the playing field, that's what we're just talking about, and that's where we want everybody. That's that utopian society.
You're forcing us to listen to you repeat what you've already said.
Shaq, you're going to let me finish, or you can just be quiet just for a second. I know it's tough. We're all in agreement on particular things. So again, in terms of DEI, nobody's being forced into DEI. Nobody's being attacked for DEI. What the point of diversity, equity, and inclusion is to point out the different cultural differences, ways to be able to acknowledge and work with each other, and actually allow for those individuals who don't get the opportunity based on the communities that they come from to have an opportunity that they would never have. That is all DEI is. It's not harming anybody. It's actually helping our society. Hence the reason why the military itself uses a variation of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We just came off of the Olympics that celebrated diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh,
so
geez.
these things are positive. Nothing's being forced unless you're offended by seeing somebody who doesn't look like you get an opportunity. That's all it is. So again, we're all in agreement that, hey, if everybody has that level playing field, that fair playing field that Dan was pointing out earlier, pulling up by the bootstraps, we shouldn't complain about. That should be.
We're clearly not in agreement, so I don't know why you keep repeating that. But anyway.
Shaq, we don't care about you because you keep interrupting.
All right. Freaking all right. Let's make our points and then let somebody else talk.
Thank you.
Well, no, he had to repeat his point, didn't he? It was Sasha's turn.
You just interrupted me right now. Let me talk.
It's Sasha's turn.
Sasha's turn.
It was
Sasha.
Yes. Father taught me that those who know how to swim, they drown from time to time. Those who don't, they don't drown. You know why? Because they don't know how to swim, so they do not go into water. So if you are having questions, or you have to make practical decisions about real estate, or about investing, or about anything, you have to use professionals, because you cannot on your own understand all the scope of rules and regulations and everything. So when you know little of that and trying to use it, and you don't have professional, you will obviously at the end of the day you will lose money. It depends how much money, but still you lose. Now, if you have professional, of course, I'm talking about reasonably well-to-do professional and so on. So he knows a lot, not everything, but a lot, so who can guide you through, obviously, simple real estate transactions for sure, maybe more complex too. That depends. It's the same thing when you're talking about medicine. You can trying to help yourself and figure out what's your problem and diagnose yourself, and eventually you'll kill yourself rather than do anything more positive than that. So you need to use professionals. Don't try to learn all tricks by yourself, and because that will ruin you. That's exactly what my late grandfather taught me.
Sasha's right. Nick is right that people need to be educated. When you lease car dealers love leasing cars because there are so many different numbers in a lease deal, and every one of those numbers can screw the buyer. And so if you've never leased before, if you can bring a friend who's been through it, or, our phones, you can have expertise on your phone. If somebody should have an app, are you leasing a car? Then walk in, ask these questions. This number means this. You could do the same thing with mortgages, that there are phone apps that try to make people be financially responsible. And they could also help make people financially literate.
Hey, Rick, just really quickly, and this is for everybody because it's interesting we're having this conversation. This conversation was had last night on Misfits Managed, which is one of our shows as well. They talked about embracing the quirks, and they had both of them, I believe, the two hosts are life coaches, Coach G as well as Lauren Dreyer, but they had a guest on as well. And one of the things you were talking about kind of alluded to what Dan said, because we were talking about housekeepers that make $50 and everything, and they were talking about how some of these young people don't really care about the $14 or $15 that are being proposed for some of these fast food jobs because they are setting their own prices. And so they're not going to even come and be your babysitter if you've got a kid for less than $20 or $25 because they understand their worth. So they're going to be charged in what they feel they can get and what the parents are wanting to pay or able to pay and everything. So I just wanted your take on that, because the argument that they were making was that some young people do understand their financial worth and are not going to just settle for any payment and everything. So they're going to charge some money that some people might have considered high, because there was a day and time that people used to be happy getting $5-10 for babysitting, but they were saying now these kids now you can't get them to even come out of the house to babysit for less than 20 or 25. And I just wanted y'all's take on that, because that's kind of even what Dan was saying when he was talking about housekeepers that are making $50. So I just wanted folks take on this notion that we have to understand our worth, because that's part of what the conversation was as well.
You're muted, Nick.
That's honestly where this
I was going to say
building
this conversation is a race to the bottom. Here's the reality of it: 90% of millionaires made their millions through real estate investing. I don't know about other people on the panel, but I have bought and sold personally millions of dollars worth of real estate. Last couple of years, I made $250,000 as a side hustle on real estate. Now, how do you do it? Do I have super education? No. Do I have a basic education? Yes. Okay, but how did I get it? I had to go do it myself, because in law school, which I went to, they provided one real estate course, and what it is basically titles of real estate, which is worthless except if you're doing real estate closing. Unfortunately, you have to go to outside education to get it. K through 12 provides nothing. The MBA programs, nothing. The law schools, nothing. And so what happens is you have, and this is one reason anybody, we're going to put a real estate class together. Well, anybody can really make millions of dollars. If you want to become a millionaire, you learn real estate. You learn how to buy. You learn how to lease properties out, commercial, residential, and unfortunately, I had to learn at the School of Hard. Fortunately, yes, I make a lot of money in real estate as a side hustle. And to ignore it and say, oh, well, we're going to have to bounce a class like Latin or art or some other incredibly stupid class they teach in K through 12 is an abomination. It's a disservice to all the kids. And to say, well, the kids don't like it. You don't go to school because you want to learn and watch cartoons. School is not to be liked. It's like work. Oh, I don't want to go to work because I don't like it. That's not the idea. When you go to school, it's so you learn something that'll make a difference in your life, whether you like it or not. So I don't
get the kids to play that game Monopoly, right? Monopoly is a game which teaches you.
Or the kids are too stupid to learn it. Look, your K through 12 in this country has failed you big time. It continues to fail you. And when teachers want a raise, deny it. They don't teach.
Monopoly is a game that helps kids to learn about real estate markets, although it was actually designed to discourage them from investing in the real estate market. But I will just say this. I'll explain that to you. I will just say this. Even if you don't do it at school, there should be easy access to courses for people who want them. Real estate, as Nick has said, it's not limited to just your own country and just your own state. If we are talking about the United States, buying properties and converting them into multi-family dwellings is a great way to increase your yield. Entering into contracts, a lot of people don't like this, but entering into contracts to provide Section 8 housing or housing to vets or other vulnerable communities is often a very good investment for you, because you know your rent's always being paid every month on time. So it's going to first of the month, so it goes straight into your bank account. There's lots of different things that you can do. The depreciation of the building structure, the immediate write-offs on fittings and fixtures, the fact that you can deduct that against your other income. That's a great way for people who have just a normal wage, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year. If you're currently paying $20,000 a year in taxes and you can reduce that to zero, then why wouldn't you do it? And people say, well, it's an ethical concern, we've got to pay money. Let your neighbour pay the money to the government. You don't need to.
Rick and then Jadobi. And we're welcome.
I mean, this all started with us talking about Kamala Harris's proposal to, which I have no idea what it is, to get more people to be homeowners. But it all boils down to you're giving people money, either in the form of lower interest rates or subsidies, tax breaks, to help them afford a house. And when we did and people got all sorts of breaks in 2007, but they all expired, and then the houses, they lost them. So this time around, whatever breaks people are getting, they have to be designed to not explode in people's faces after 2 years.
I just like your comment before that hedge fund managers can get big tips. Because I might get a job working at like an ice cream store if it means that my clients can come and give me massive tips in America and it's going to be tax-free. I really like that idea.
Then you need to vote for Trump, because Trump has no upper income limit on if you're making $15 million a year in tips, it's all tax-free according to Trump's.
Up to 15. You say up to 15 million a year.
Of it.
Or 30 million, 100 million a year. But it's all in
I like
tips.
it. I think it sounds fantastic. So I'll sign up for that. I'm not technically supposed to vote, but perhaps you can do it for me, Rick.
So Congress has to vote this in, right? It's not the president can make proposals. Congress has to vote in and pass it. There's going to be give and take and compromise on all this stuff to begin with. There's going to be a limit on income and all that, just because people aren't stupid and they're not going to create a avenue for wealthy people to gain advantage of the tip thing. This is supposed to be beneficial to those who earn less income and work in the services industry where they make very little income, and this is a way to benefit them. To unfairly penalize them because of tips is wrong. This was something that was passed in the Inflation Reduction Act, which didn't reduce any inflation, by the Biden administration. Harris actually cast the vote to put this thing over. That's what started the emphasis on taxing tips as much as it did, and all of the exposure with respect to these people who make very little. Let's beat upon the little guy. It seems to be that's what Democrats are liking to do now. They're talking out of both sides of their mouth. Harris does. Harris has flipped on so many policies. I don't know what to believe about her anymore, and nobody else does. I do know that she co-owns this bad economy. She co-owns our involvement in wars and the debacle in Afghanistan and everything else that's happened that this president and this administration has caused and inflicted on the American people. Hyperinflation, all these things are co-owned by Harris. And yes, Waltz's own commanding officer was the one that was complaining about his military record. It doesn't necessarily
that guy
mean
was
that
hired by a political opponent to say that stuff.
Okay,
Or
so
he was already
his
saying it
commanding
and then got
officer
hired
telling-
because he was already
telling us
saying
what
it.
his military record was like, what his service was like, and that he knew this deployment was coming and chose to get out. Sure, he wanted to run for Congress, but still, the moniker fits. He didn't want to go to Afghanistan or Iraq. Who would want to, really? But
Then don't sign up for the military.
The claimant.
Don't sign up for the military and take all the benefits of being employed by the military if you're not prepared to risk.
But it
risk-
is false valor to suddenly say you're a hero when you weren't. He wasn't
Again.
employed. He's never in war.
Can I-
24 years in the service and never, ever was in battle or forced fire. Guy's a fraud.
No, so
He never
Again,
claimed to have been.
But now you're supposed to celebrate. He doesn't own a house. He doesn't have a bank account. He doesn't have any
Nobody is
assets.
celebrating
Yeah,
him.
I like
The thing
Trump's
is-
service record better. Dan, Trump had a really good service
Yeah.
record. Wait a minute, Donald Trump never was in the military.
Never
He was a
claimed.
draft dodger. I mean,
But he never claimed to, Nick. He never claimed to.
Trump
He
had
never
gone.
claimed to. So what are you having a crack at him for?
Claimed a service
Trump
record that
never served in the military.
This is the madness that we're having to deal with right now.
I'm
Again,
sorry.
This
It's
is
like
the
Gary.
madness
I mean,
that we're having to deal
has
with.
to be timed on purpose, right?
This is why people. This is
cameraman there.
why
people hate the
individuals are
thing.
turned off.
That's why
from the whole
Democrats
Trump
are always
campaign.
pulling this kind of stuff.
This
and
is
claiming
why.
false valor and
This
everything.
is why.
You're claiming this guy was like a military buffoon, and your president, your candidate, Donald Trump, was a known draft dog.
I mean,
Give me a break, Dan, please.
right now,
Don't compare records.
we're
Oh,
having.
what? Hang on, wait. And there's no other Democrats that tried to dodge the draft? Are you serious?
No,
We're
we're
having-
talking
Yeah,
about.
we're talking about
He was
Trump,
a
a
draft
lifelong
dodger,
Democrat.
right?
Are you serious right now?
You're so
Why
full of
is
it,
it-
Nick.
Hold on a second.
Toby, you don't even.
I
Hold
got
on.
Opinion doesn't even matter to me.
Everybody, we're at the hold on, everybody, we're at the top of the hour.
raise my hand one
That
time.
is a loser.
Very quickly, make it fast, Jacoby. Make it fast.
Okay, I just wanted to touch on the education thing because we had touched on that, and that's where it's good to have a financial literacy class. And as Dan pointed out earlier, people still get taken advantage of, even, or I think it was Dan and Sasha pointed out. It was we need to have some form, because Dan actually was talking about the tips, which we completely agree on, and talking about how, you know, they're going to negotiate the plan and make sure that the little guy is taken care of, which is what we're supposed to do, is compromise and work together and find that common ground, which I thought it was great that Kamala Harris agreed and said, okay, let's go this way.
Yeah, but she casted the both
finish.
across
Let
it
me
to happen.
finish real fast. I'm trying to
You're
finish
talking
real
out of
fast.
both sides of your
I'm
mouth.
trying to finish real fast, Dan.
You could give him a ruler and he'd somehow spin it
Chat,
into
are we really
into
going to
something
end
else.
this way?
Really fast.
Thank you. So taking that idea is a great idea because it has been talked about. It has been done in the restaurant industry for a very long time, and people don't actually talk about the tips that they receive, and they actually go home tax-free with bartending and everything else because it's a low-wage thing and it helps them. They're getting paid $2 something an hour, and it's best for them to get taken care of that way. So yes, that is an agreement, and that's what we should be focusing on, and that's compromise. And the argument that she's talking out of both sides of her mouth, well, JD Vance has changed his name 3 times, has changed his policies every single year just so he can make a political gain. So stop the argument on that. Everybody changes their views. Even Donald Trump changes his. In terms of stolen valor, can we stop arguing about a man's military service? The man served 24 years. Let him serve that 24 years, just as JD Vance served 4 years. 4 or 6 years, however many years. It doesn't matter. He put on the uniform. Just thank him for his service and move on. Don't question what he did. Don't sit there and denigrate what he did and call him a loser and all this other. That's wrong.